Hello, people. Finished a book. Sherman, Fighting Prophet. This was a real good book. This was written 1931. Anyways, there's a little bit of blurbs on it, and there's some info on Google. This is supposedly one of the real good Sherman biographies. It's a long book, and it probably goes 25 pages before Sherman is even born. The author takes great pains to explain why Sherman was so dedicated to the Union. He actually liked the South. He lived in the South for a long time. He was not really an abolitionist, but for him, everything was the Union. Everything was the federal government. The people that moved into the Northwest, and at that time, Ohio was considered Northwest. They everything good that happened for them was because of the federal government, and any screwing over that people tried to do to them, regarding land and taxes and everything, those were the states trying to do shit like that. So he was, he was rock solid behind the Union. Probably went a little bit overboard with the notes here. 1932, this was published. 653 pages. Lloyd Lewis was the author. Lloyd with two L's. Early in the book, this is several times that I've read that the annexation of Texas, that one of the prime reasons for that was so that the slaveholders would have more territory. That adding Texas to the United States had a lot to do with slavery. Over and over in the beginning of this book, it goes a long ways before the Civil War starts, but over and over you find that states' rights actually is synonymous with slavery. That's what the whole thing's all about. Right before the war, Sherman, who is working in a military academy, a quasi-military academy in the South. He's offered high command in the Confederate Army. His reply is nowhere to be found. The South begins the war. Of course, they fire on Fort Sumter. That's what everybody believes is the beginning of the war. But before that, they confiscate federal property. And actually, some of the boxes are moved to this academy where Sherman is working. And he looks at the boxes, and the federal part of the writing on the outside of the box has been scratched off. Let's see. We start some reading here. This is Bull Run, top of 178. Sherman was there. Sherman and his men leave Bull Run formed up into a square, which is the same way that Napoleon leaves Waterloo. Top of 178. This is real short. With honors almost even as to dead and wounded, the two armed mobs had fought magnificently for novices, and had taken turns running away. The mob that fled last was the loser. And of course, that was the Union, the big skedaddle. Again, in here is the account of Confederate forces that have blue uniforms on, and that has a big part in the turning of the battle. Oh yeah, and I'm also supposed to read the first-hand account. This is about the square. The square closed just before I reached it, and I was left outside. There was but one thing to do, get off my horse and get in under the row of bayonets. I did this, and picking up a musket, put it against my knee and knelt there. Sherman was on horseback in the center of the square, and just as the cavalrymen swept up, he gave the word to fire. I never heard such a volley in my life. It knocked the Confederates out of the saddle right and left. A few of them had such momentum that they came on anyway. One of these struck at me with his saber. It glanced off and broke my middle finger. Another one of them cut a 16-year-old boy standing above me. The boy sunk his bayonet in the rider's side, and as the horse swerved, the musket was torn from his hands and bobbed away, fast between the Confederates' ribs. The boy sobbed, "He took my gun." Sherman's insanity. Uh, all through the book, he doesn't seem like he's a real normal guy. His insanity is early in the war. He gets kind of fidgety about numbers, and he keeps calling for reinforcements for where he's at, and he gives out some orders that have to be countermanded. That's what the press claims is his insanity, but he leads a little weird life before that, where he runs from one job to another, and he just get to a job, and he'll get offered another job, and he'll change his mind, and I don't know, he's a little bit crazy. Bottom of 382 to top of 383. Although careless commenters, south and north, would in time ascribe to Grant the opprobrious title Butcher, implying or confidently asserting that the battle methods were characteristically more costly than those of any other general in either force, an examination of statistics would tell a different story. In his average battle across 4 years of war, Grant would lose 113 killed and wounded in every 1,000 men. Lee's comparable loss, exclusive of the Wilderness battles in 1864, on which he kept no figures, was 149. Hood, while opposing Sherman, lost 154 in every 1,000, while Sherman's methods sacrificed only 62 by contrast. Johnson, in his average battle with Sherman throughout 1864-1865, lost 80 against Sherman's 90. Sherman's average across the entire career was only 63 in every 1,000. I don't know, I thought that was pretty interesting. A guy named Hazen captures some rebel militia on the march through South Carolina. And this will be a first-hand account. This is kind of funny. Page 492. First they marched through Georgia, then they marched through the Carolinas. And South Carolina is supposed to get Sherman's special venom because they are the ones that seceded first. So he captures these militia guys. Venerable home guards, I did not turn these old gentlemen over to the provost guard, but gave them some tents near my headquarters. In the evening they all came over to my campfire and entertained me with an account of their novel war experiences. Each man had some peculiar and personal malady, an account of which figured largely in the conversation. In the morning I had a handsome walking stick cut for each, gave them a good breakfast, and let them go. They thanked me pleasantly for the entertainment, liked the walking sticks, and did not see the joke. Bottom of page 560, top of 561. It's real foggy out here this morning. It's kind of cool. Very warm morning. On May 10th, Davis was captured while fleeing through the dawn. This is Jefferson Davis. While fleeing through the dawn, dressed in his wife's raincoat and shawl. To the last he believed that Johnson had purposefully exposed him to this fate by denying him the proper cavalry escort. Johnston's position was that the cavalry men were in honor bound to surrender to Sherman like the rest of the army, and not to go trailing off protecting an executive who ran away. Johnston wasn't real fond of Jefferson Davis. Page 623. This is after the war, and it's actually in 1877 when there's a lot of shit going on, kind of like shit that goes on today. And this is something that Sherman says, a quote from him. If civil war breaks out, it will be 1,000 times worse than the other war. It will be the fighting of neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend. It is only a question of time until the politicians ruin us. Partisanship is a curse. These men are not howling for the country's good, but for their own political advantage, and the people are too big fools to see it. We are liable to smash into 1,000 pieces every time we have an election. I thought that was pretty good for what's going on nowadays. Sherman's wife, and I'm not reading anything here, Sherman's wife is a crazy Catholic. That's all she does, is try to recruit people to the Catholic faith. She just works on that constantly, goes to church all the time. Sherman never really becomes a Catholic. One of his sons, named Willie, is killed. Well, he's not killed. He dies of some kind of fever during the war, and it affects Sherman greatly. And then he has another son named Tom that enters the priesthood, and that affects him just about the same way. He thinks that the kid is just wasting his life. Anyways, great book. If you see it, pick it up. Thanks for watching.